Hi, you're on the Reddit Confessions channel. Say something, Corbin. Anything. That's the last thing I heard before the elevator doors closed between us. The walls were gold-toned mirrors. I could still see her mouth moving behind the metal, apologizing or arguing. I don't even know. I pressed the ground floor button and just stood there, frozen, watching myself shrink in the reflection. A man in a wrinkled shirt with a cake stain near the collar and eyes that looked hollow. So that's how our anniversary ended. Not with a kiss. Not with a toast. Not even a fight. Just a joke, hers, and silence, mine. Here's what happened. A few hours earlier, we were at a rooftop party downtown. Not my thing. There were hanging bulbs, gold balloons, and waiters in matching aprons saying things like lemon zest aioli and pine nut reductions. Roxy organized the whole thing. A little surprise for our 7th wedding anniversary, she said. Surprise. She gave a toast. People clinked glasses. She looked beautiful. She always does. In that burgundy jumpsuit and heels that made her taller than me. I didn't mind. I never did. Then, with a flute of champagne in hand and a spotlight of attention centered right on her, she said it. I know people wonder what it's like being married to someone like Corbin. People laughed already. Too soon, which made my stomach turn. She kept going. Living with him is like living with a beautifully broken GPS. He wants to lead, but the poor thing is always recalculating. Laughter. She wasn't done. And don't even get me started on the emotional sensitivity. He once had a 3-day existential crisis because I forgot to say goodnight. I married a poet. A soggy, anxious, wonderful poet. Louder laughter. I smiled, like I always do, but something cracked. Something I'd been taping back together for years. She turned toward me after the toast and blew me a kiss, expecting the usual blush, the quiet gratitude. But I didn't blush. I nodded. I waited. And then I walked. Out of the rooftop bar. Down the fire escape. Into the lobby. Past the valet who asked if everything was okay. And into the elevator, where the silence finally spoke louder than her jokes ever could. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. But in that silver reflection, I watched something in me deflate. Not like a balloon, but like a man giving up on being misunderstood for the 100th time. So, yeah, I walked out, and she hasn't stopped texting since. But here's the part no one understands. I didn't leave because of the joke. I left because she knew exactly what that joke would do. And she said it anyway. I didn't go home that night. I didn't even leave the building. I sat on the back steps of the service exit with my knees up to my chest like a teenager who just failed his first test. There was still music thumping above me, and every once in a while I'd hear laughter echo down the alley. High-pitched, carefree, too familiar. It was like the universe replaying her voice over and over again just to make sure I didn't forget the humiliation. My phone buzzed. Then again. And again. First it was, "Where did you go?" Then, "Seriously, are you doing this right now?" And finally, the one that hurt more than anything, "Grow up, Corbin." That was it. 3 words that hit harder than the entire room full of laughter. Because it wasn't just her making the joke. It was that she believed it. That behind all the cutesy language and playful teasing was something bitter and real. She didn't see me as her equal. She saw me as her project. Her soft, overly emotional husband who'd never quite meet the bar. I sat there until sunrise, and the truth slowly began to form in my chest like a bruise. I wasn't hurt because she embarrassed me. I was hurt because I realized that, deep down, she had stopped respecting me a long time ago. I finally went to my friend Milo's apartment. He's the only person I knew wouldn't judge me for showing up at 6 a.m. without shoes on. I left mine in the elevator, I think. Milo didn't ask questions. He handed me a blanket, turned on the kettle, and let me sit there like a ghost. I must have stared at the same spot on the wall for hours, because when I blinked again, it was afternoon and my phone had 27 unread messages. All from her. I should have deleted them. I should have blocked her or at least given myself space. But I opened the last one, and my stomach dropped. It was a screenshot of a post from her close friend's story the night before. A picture of me, sitting alone at the edge of the rooftop, hunched over my drink. The caption read, "Mood when your husband leaves because you roasted him a little too hard." The comments under it, they weren't kind. Her friend Tamra, "Ugh, men are such babies." Someone else, "At least he's not crying in the bathroom this time." And the worst one, from someone I didn't even recognize, "Why are you still with him?" My hands shook. My breath caught in my throat. It wasn't just a joke. It never was. That was the moment I knew this wasn't just about walking out of a party. It was about walking out of a marriage I didn't even recognize anymore. I hadn't planned on going back to the apartment so soon. But Milo had a date coming over, and even though he didn't say a word, I could feel his polite discomfort the longer I stayed sprawled out on his pull-out couch. So I left. I Ubered back to our place just after 10 p.m., half hoping she wouldn't be home. But the lights were off. It was quiet. For a moment, I stood in the hallway, hand on the door, breathing like someone about to disarm a bomb. And when I stepped inside, it felt exactly like that. Tense, delicate, dangerous. Nothing was broken. Nothing was moved. But everything felt altered. Like the furniture itself knew something I didn't. I didn't mean to snoop. Honestly, I only came in to grab some clothes and my laptop. I opened our shared closet and noticed something immediately. Her suitcase was missing. Not the one she takes on work trips, the other one. The small white one with the black handle she only used when staying overnight somewhere nearby. My stomach turned. I opened the drawer where she kept her chargers. Gone. Toothbrush? Gone. Lip balm from her side of the bathroom sink? Also gone. She hadn't just packed a bag. She'd packed herself. That's when I made the mistake. I opened her jewelry box. Not for the jewelry, but because she sometimes left notes or receipts folded inside. Old habit. I found a folded photo booth strip. Not ours. Two people. Blurry but recent. Her and a man I didn't recognize. At first, I tried to rationalize it. Maybe someone from her job? But the way they were looking at each other, noses pressed together in the second frame, her hand resting on his chest in the third. It was the kind of body language that spoke volumes. Intimate. Familiar. Not new. I put the strip back exactly where I found it. Sat on the edge of our bed. And just stared at the floor. Not crying. Not screaming. Just absorbing. Absorbing the quiet, the truth, the weight of it all. The party, the jokes, the online comments, they weren't the beginning. They were the aftermath. The embers of something already burned out. I had been grieving a marriage that had already died. I just hadn't gotten the memo. Then my phone buzzed. "We need to talk." Not here. Coffee shop on Grant and Willow. Noon tomorrow. No greeting. No apology. I read the message 3 times before turning off my phone completely. Because I already knew. This wasn't a conversation. It was a confirmation. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that photo strip. Her smile wasn't just wide, it was free. Like the kind of smile you give when you think no one else is watching. I wasn't in that smile. I hadn't seen that version of her in years, and the fact that someone else had kept gnawing at me like a dull blade. I replayed her message over and over in my mind. "We need to talk. Not here." As if the apartment had become a stranger too. At 11:47, I walked toward Grant and Willow. I didn't expect anything grand. No teary apology. I wasn't even sure I wanted to hear what she had to say. But something in me, maybe the part that still hoped this was all a misunderstanding, needed to see her face when I asked her one question. "Was it always a joke to you?" The cafe was nearly empty. Just a few college kids with headphones and an elderly man dozing off near the window. Then I saw her, already seated, phone in hand, looking far too composed for someone who had detonated our marriage 3 nights ago. She stood when she saw me, arms halfway open, like she expected a hug. I stopped 2 feet away. "Where's your bag?" I asked. She blinked. "What?" "The one you took with you. You didn't think I'd notice?" Her mouth opened like she had a ready response. But that's when I saw him. He walked in confidently like he belonged there. That was the worst part. No hesitation. No shame. Just familiarity. She didn't even flinch. "This is Micah," she said, as casually as if introducing me to a coworker at a barbecue. "I wanted him to be here too." I laughed. I actually laughed out loud, short and dry, the kind of laugh that doesn't touch your eyes. "You brought him? To this?" She didn't apologize. Micah just nodded at me like we were equals. Like we both had a right to sit at the same table and discuss my own collapse. I didn't sit down. Couldn't. I felt like I was spinning inside my own body. "How long?" I asked. My voice cracked. Not from rage, from sheer, humiliating grief. She didn't look surprised by the question. "A few months," she said. "It started emotional. I didn't think it would become what it did." I nodded. That was it. That was the final nail. Not the affair itself, but the calm way she admitted it. Like she was confessing to trying a new restaurant without me. "You made jokes about my weaknesses while building a secret life with someone else," I said. "Do you even hear yourself?" She looked at me like I was the one being dramatic. And that's when I realized she hadn't lost me. She'd discarded me. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I didn't throw my coffee at either of them or demand explanations. I just walked out. And for the first time in years, I didn't explain myself. No emotional recap. No desperate plea. No, we need to fix this. I left them both sitting at that table like actors waiting for a cue that never came. I didn't go back to Milo's place. I didn't go to work. I turned off my phone, drained my savings into a backup account she didn't have access to, and booked a cabin 4 hours north with no Wi-Fi and no cell signal. Just trees, silence, and the kind of cold that stings when you breathe. I needed to be somewhere so far removed from her voice that even my thoughts would forget the sound of it. By day 2, I stopped counting how many times I reached for my phone, only to remember it was turned off. I didn't want to be reachable. I didn't want her apologies or excuses or whatever half-hearted performance she had rehearsed with Micah after I left. I just wanted stillness. My body ached in ways I hadn't noticed before, from years of shrinking myself to make her feel bigger. I journaled. I slept. I cooked for one and didn't clean up right away. It sounds pathetic, but it felt like freedom. When I came back 5 days later, the first thing I did was check my phone. I was expecting texts, maybe calls. What I found instead was something else entirely. There were dozens of missed calls, sure, but there were also voicemails from unfamiliar numbers. Her friends, her mom, even her boss. It seemed she had made me the villain of some spiraling story. "Please call her back," one message said. "She's not okay. She's spiraling. She hasn't slept." Another from her mother said, "Whatever happened, son? You don't just disappear like that." That's when it hit me. My silence was louder than I ever could have imagined. She was crumbling without someone to narrate her chaos to. I'd always been her emotional cushion, her outlet, her scapegoat, her steady hand. Without me, the show stopped. The audience left. And suddenly, she was just a woman sitting on the edge of her decisions with no one to justify them to. I didn't respond. Not yet. I had one more thing to do first. I walked into our apartment, quietly, like I was visiting a place that no longer belonged to me, and sat at the kitchen table. The same one where she once said, "You take everything too seriously." The same table where she planned her little joke party. I pulled out a pen and began to write. Not a goodbye, not a confession, just a mirror. I didn't write the letter for her to cry over. I didn't write it to hurt her either. I wrote it the way you close a chapter, not by slamming it shut, but by underlining the parts that made you finally walk away. It was short, just 2 pages. Honest. No poetry, no emotional spirals. Just facts wrapped in the quiet kind of pain that can only come from being humiliated by someone you trusted with your worst moments. I folded it neatly, placed it on her side of the bed, and left the apartment. I didn't text. I didn't call. I gave no warning. By the time she came back from wherever she had been, maybe Micah's place, maybe her mother's, who knows, it would be waiting for her, pressed flat against the linen she used to roll her eyes at me for smoothing every morning. I had no idea she would read it out loud. 2 days later, I received a video. Not from her. From Milo. It had been posted to her close friend's story again, the same place she'd mocked me before. This time, she wasn't smirking. She was sitting in her car, hair messy, mascara smudged, voice shaking, reading my letter line by line into her phone. At first, I couldn't move, just sat on Milo's futon, frozen, phone resting on my chest like it weighed 100 pounds. Then she got to the part where I'd written, "You didn't just joke about my weakness. You broadcast it. You monetized it. You sold it to the people who were already looking for a reason to laugh at men like me." Her voice cracked. She paused the video. Then she added something that wasn't in the letter. "I didn't know it would break him," she whispered, almost like to herself. "I thought he'd laugh. He always laughs." That sentence made something sharp twist in my chest. Not sympathy, not love, just disbelief. How could she not know? How could someone live beside you for 7 years, watch your hands tremble when you get anxious, see how you overthink every conversation, and still say I didn't know it would break him? I didn't finish the video. Couldn't. Felt too late, too performative. Like someone trying to put out a fire long after the house had turned to ash. Later that night, I received a message from her mother. One line. "She's afraid she broke something in herself too." I stared at it for a long time. Maybe she did. But that wasn't mine to fix anymore. I wasn't planning on going to her workplace. I really wasn't. But when I saw her reading my letter out loud on social media, crying in front of her close friends, like she was the one left in pieces, something inside me snapped. Not out of vengeance. Not even anger. But clarity. I finally understood that she never saw me. Not really. To her, I'd always been a role. The sensitive husband, the overreactor, the man to compare others to. So I made an appointment with her boss. The office was sleek, floor-to-ceiling windows, coffee that smelled expensive. Her name was still on the corner plaque. Roxy Kearns, VP of Brand Strategy. I sat down with her director, a man named Elliot who had always looked at me like I was too fragile for Roxy's world. He greeted me stiffly, clearly uncomfortable. "She's not here today," he said. "Is everything all right?" I handed him a sealed envelope. "Just a notice of what's coming," I said. A professional courtesy. Inside was a summary of the emotional harassment I'd endured, not from her job, but through her abuse of professional boundaries. Using workplace events to mock her spouse, turning me into an internal joke, posting private photos, breaking my trust not just as a partner but as a human being. It wasn't a legal threat. Not yet. But it was formal enough to cause a shift. Elliot sat back. "We weren't aware of everything that happened," he said, words slow and calculated. "Thank you for bringing this to our attention." I left the building, not feeling victorious, but strangely clean. Like I had finally taken back a piece of myself that had been eroding for years. What I didn't expect came 3 hours later. A message from Micah. I nearly deleted it on sight. But curiosity won. It was short. "I didn't know about the photo booth pics. I didn't know she was still married when it started. Thought you had already left her." I reread it 5 times. He'd been her escape, but she'd lied to him too. She hadn't told him the whole truth. And maybe he was naive enough to believe he wasn't just a side chapter in a bigger mess. Suddenly, it wasn't about me anymore. It wasn't even about Micah. It was about her needing an audience, anyone, to distract from the silence she feared most. And now that silence was closing in. The last time I saw her was 3 weeks after I disappeared from her radar for good. It was unplanned. She showed up at my brother's house where I had been staying quietly. No social media, no announcements, just healing. Milo had been helping me find a place of my own. Something small, quiet, away from all the noise. I was finally sleeping through the night. I was cooking again. I started drawing, something I hadn't done since college. And I hadn't cried in days. That's when she knocked on the door. I opened it before Milo could stop me. There she was, standing in the same burgundy coat she wore the night of the rooftop party. Full circle. But her face had none of that confidence anymore. It looked worn, older, like the weight of her choices had finally found her. She didn't ask to come in. She just said, "I wanted to say sorry. Not to fix anything. Just sorry." I waited. She looked at the ground and added, You were never weak. I was just too insecure to admit how strong you were for staying with someone like me. For a long time, I didn't know what to say. But in that silence, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. Not revenge. Not superiority. Just calm. I know, I said softly, but I'm not yours to apologize to anymore. She nodded. No more tears. No begging. No last-ditch speech. Just acceptance. She turned and walked down the porch steps like someone finally carrying their own guilt instead of handing it off to me. That night, I signed the lease on my new apartment. A few weeks later, I started volunteering at a local community center, helping teenagers with creative writing. One of them asked me, "Why do you write so honestly?" And I said without thinking, "Because pretending almost destroyed me. Sometimes strength is loud. But sometimes, it's just the quiet decision to live on your own terms, even after being the punchline in someone else's story. I don't hate her. I'm not bitter. I'm free. And that's enough." Thank you for joining me on this emotional journey. If you've ever experienced something like this, a moment where someone underestimated your quiet strength, share it in the comments below. What was your breaking point? What gave you peace? And don't forget to subscribe to Reddit Confessions for more true stories that reveal what happens behind the silence.